This story began on an ordinary Saturday evening. 4 friends, Alex, Mike, Lisa, and Kate, decided to spend the evening at Alex's house. It was a spacious old house on the outskirts of the city that he inherited from his grandmother. In the basement, among many antique items, a strange object was gathering dust, which attracted the attention of the company last weekend, an old, well-worn Ouija board. Alex said that his grandmother brought this board from Europe after World War II, and that it was supposedly possible to communicate with spirits on it. He didn't believe it, but old things interested him as a collector. This time Mike, an avid skeptic, suggested checking if the board really works to finally dispel the myths and laugh at the legends. They settled down in the living room, pulling the curtains and lighting a few candles for the atmosphere. Lisa, the only one who showed skepticism, felt uncomfortable, but did not want to seem like a coward in front of her friends. Alex carefully placed the board on the table and placed a wooden heart-shaped pointer with a hole in the middle on top of it. "Okay, who's gonna start?" Mike asked, grinning. "Let's ask the first question. Which one of us is the coolest?" They laughed, and Alex took the initiative. "Who are you, spirit? If you're here, show us your presence." The pointer remained in place, and the friends laughed. Lisa rolled her eyes, but just as they were about to stop playing, the pointer wavered slightly. The friends froze, but Mike immediately burst out laughing. "Oh great, Alex! What a weak handwriting you have when you push the pointer!" But when he took his hands away, the pointer suddenly moved slowly towards the letter P. Mike looked at Lisa and noticed that her hands were shackled with fright. "Okay, that's enough. Let's just get this over with," she said. Yes, we'll finish it now." Alex nodded, but his eyes were glued to the blackboard. Now the pointer began to move faster, composing the word prove. "Is this a provocation?" Mike asked, but his voice faltered. "Providence? A failure?" Kate suggested, breaking into a whisper. The word was never finished. The pointer froze. The friends exchanged glances. The tension in the room was growing. "Well, that's enough. We're done," Lisa said in a trembling voice and tried to remove the pointer, but it seemed to stick to the board. Alex pushed him aside with force. It wasn't as easy as if he was being pulled to the other side. With a sudden crack, the board split in half, and the room became even quieter. Great, they broke it. Mike tried to look indifferent, but his fingers were shaking. That was the end of the game, but the uneasy feeling did not leave them until the very end of the evening. At that moment, no one paid much attention to the strange sounds coming from the basement, or the fact that the light in the hallway flickered a couple of times. When everyone went home, they felt like they were leaving something important, but inexplicable. The next day, Alex decided that he needed to throw away the broken board. He went down to the basement, but couldn't find her. Only the cracked parts of the pointer lay on the floor, as if to remind them of what had happened. He decided to turn a blind eye to this, thinking that one of his friends had taken the board for a joke. A few days have passed, and life has returned to its usual course. None of the friends brought up the topic of the board anymore, trying to forget about what had happened and focus on work and daily chores. However, an uneasy feeling, like a fetid fog, did not leave them. Mike woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat more than once. He was haunted by nightmares where the board moved on its own on the table, writing incomprehensible words that turned into gloomy predictions. Lisa began to avoid the company, refused to answer calls, and seemed to be increasingly withdrawn into herself. Only Kate continued to lead her usual lifestyle, as if nothing had happened. One day, on his way home from work, Mike decided to stop by her place. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with their friend. When he drove up to her house, he saw that the windows were covered with thick curtains. Although a week ago, Kate had bragged about her new curtains, which she had specially chosen to let more light into the house. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. A few more attempts, silence. Mike was about to leave when he heard muffled sounds from inside, similar to rustling and a soft knock. He pressed himself against the door, trying to hear what was going on inside. His heart was pounding like a hammer, and he felt an unpleasant chill down his back. Deciding that something was wrong, Mike walked around the house and tried to look through the window. What he saw horrified him. In the kitchen, at the table, Kate was sitting surrounded by many candles. The light of their flames cast ominous shadows on her face. Her eyes were closed, her hands were on the table, and she was resting on her palms. A board for chances. That's the board they broke. Mike couldn't believe his eyes. He peered, but realized that the board looked like new, without a single scratch. Kate, on the other hand, seemed completely engrossed in the process, her lips moving. But Mike couldn't make out what she was whispering. He dialed Alex's number, trying to figure out what to do next. Alex did not answer immediately, and his voice was strange, somehow detached, as if he was not in reality. Mike? Have you seen her too? What are you talking about, Alex? I'm at Kate's. That damn board. She's got it. We broke it. Mike was almost screaming, not understanding what was going on. Alex fell silent. There was only static on the line. Then he whispered, I do not know what it is. She comes to all of us. I had the same thing. It was on my desk last night. I tried to burn it, but it doesn't burn, you know? She doesn't want to leave. Alex, listen. I need to get Kate out of there. Will you be able to come? Mike tried to come up with a plan, but his mind refused to take it all in. No, I cannot. I think you should leave her. The board won't stop, Mike. She comes for each of us. And again, the connection was cut off. Mike dropped the phone into his pocket and rushed to the front door. He knew that this was wrong, that it all sounded more like nonsense, but the fear for Kate was stronger. He knocked down the door with his shoulder and burst into the house. When he ran to the kitchen, he saw that Kate was still sitting at the table, but her eyes were open. She was looking at him, and the expression on her face made Mike freeze. Kate, what are you doing? What is it? He asked, trying to remain calm, although everything inside was shaking with horror. She's back, Kate said in a calm, almost indifferent voice. I can't let her go, Mike. She wants us to finish. Finished what? Kate, it's just a board. We have to get rid of her. But Kate shook her head. Her gaze was blank, as if she was looking through Mike. We can't. She's connected to us. It's not just an item. We woke her up. Mike didn't know what to do anymore. He rushed to the board, trying to rip it off Kate. But as soon as his fingers touched the smooth surface, he felt something strange. A sharp pain shot through his arm, as if the board had hit him by itself. Stepping back, Mike saw a deep scratch on his palm, as if someone had drawn a sharp knife. What the hell is this, Kate? We were supposed to throw it away. It won't work, she said softly. She won't let us rest until she gets what she wants. Mike didn't understand exactly what the subject wanted. He picked up the phone again and dialed Lisa, hoping that at least she could help. Lisa answered almost immediately, but her voice was agitated. Mike, thank God you're okay. She sounded like she was crying. Alex, him. He disappeared. What do you mean? Mike felt like the world was collapsing around him. He just talked to me. No, I just went to his house. The door was open and everything was scattered inside. I only found this, Lisa sobbed. There was a note. Just one word, conducting. Lisa's words echoed in his head. Conducting. The word they were trying to decipher when it all started. What did it mean? And why did Kate have the board? But most importantly, why did they all feel that she was coming for each of them? Lisa, we need to meet. It's about all of us, you know? We need to collect everything we know and get rid of this stuff once and for all. I'm at Kate's. Bring everything you have here. Lisa agreed, but Mike could hear her voice trembling with fear. He hung up the phone and returned to Kate, who had been sitting motionless all this time as if she had been disconnected from reality. It took about an hour before Lisa appeared on the doorstep. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She was carrying a bag full of scattered papers, photographs, and old letters. I found this at Alex's, she said, throwing her bag on the table. His grandmother kept a diary. It looks like she's been studying this board for years. Mike quickly spread out the papers, trying to find at least some clue. Among the many notes and letters, one sheet stood out, covered with a neat handwriting. It was written at the top in large letters. Conducting is the key to the mystery. Below was a long entry about how the board was created and how it was used in ancient times. It says here that the board was created to communicate with the guide. Mike read aloud, trying to understand. This guide is not a spirit, but something like that. How should I put it? An intermediary between the worlds. And in order to get rid of his influence, you need to complete the ritual started with the help of the board. This is all nonsense. No, it's not nonsense, Lisa shook her head. We woke her up, and now she's attached to us. But how can we complete this ritual if we don't even know what she wants? Mike was on the verge of hysteria. Why is she following us? Lisa unfolded another piece of paper on which was painted a round symbol with various signs. In the center of the symbol was the word prove. They stared at the paper, trying to figure out what it meant. The guide, Lisa said. It's not a name, it's a symbol. This circle is the way. She wants us to find something that will lead us to the end of the path. Mike gritted his teeth. It all sounded crazy, but they had no other choice. They had to figure out exactly what this board wanted before it was too late. Mike pulled himself together. We must follow these instructions. We have to figure out what this symbol means and how to complete this damn ritual. They looked at the board on the table again. The pointer slowly, as if an invisible force was guiding it, moved to the center and stopped at the letter K. Mike felt cold goosebumps run over his skin. The pointer stopped at the letter K, and everyone fell silent, as if they were afraid to make an unnecessary move. Lisa bit her lip and slowly unfolded another piece of paper from her bag. A map with a maze of signs was drawn on it, and there were strange symbols around the edges. She looked at Mike, then at Kate, who was still sitting motionless, and said softly, Mike, if I understand correctly, this is a map. A map that indicates the place where the ritual can be completed. But there's one thing. She hesitated, not knowing how to continue. But what, Lisa? Tell me already. Mike couldn't stand it, nervously tugging at his shirt sleeve. It says here that the ritual can only be completed if all the participants in the session are in one place. She pointed to the center of the map, where a circle was depicted. Otherwise, the board will continue to look for new victims until it gets what it wants. But Alex is missing. How can we complete the ritual without him? Mike's voice broke and he felt his throat go dry with fear. Lisa silently shook her head. She didn't know what to say. Kate finally came to her senses, slowly got up from her chair, and staggered over to them. Her face was pale and her eyes seemed empty. We have to try, she said in a weak voice. If we don't do this, then not only we, but everyone we care about will be in danger. The board, it won't leave us alone. Mike and Lisa exchanged glances. They understood that they had no choice. They should take a chance and try to complete this ritual. Lisa looked at the map again and pointed to the old building marked next to the circle symbol. This is an abandoned church on the outskirts of the city. Apparently, that's where we need to perform the ritual. Mike nodded. He knew this place. They had once been there on a field trip when they were still in school. The building had stood empty for many years and was shunned by everyone who had heard legends about strange sounds and disappearances in this area. Good. We'll go there. Now, he resolutely grabbed Lisa's bag with the map and notes. But what are we going to do with Alex? We don't even know where he is. We don't have time to look for him, Lisa sighed. I'm sure if we start the ritual, he'll feel it. The board will lead him there. She wants it to be over. Mike nodded. He knew Lisa was right. As time passed, they had less and less chance of getting out of this situation alive. They quickly packed up everything they needed and headed to the car. It took about 40 minutes to get to the abandoned church, but it seemed like an eternity to them. In silence, they stared at the deserted streets they passed, feeling a fog of terror squeeze their hearts. When they finally arrived at the old church, night had already fallen on the city. The building towered in front of them in a gloomy silhouette. The windows were broken, and the walls were covered with cracks and mold. The doors seemed to be waiting for them, wide open like the huge mouth of a monster. Come on, Mike said, taking Kate's hand and squeezing it as if it could protect them from an invisible enemy. They went inside, and the silence of the building seemed to cover them with a thick blanket. Every step echoed hollowly through the empty corridors, and every rustle seemed like an ominous omen. They quickly reached the main hall, where services had once been held. There was an old, dusty altar in the center of the hall. Mike laid out a board on it, lit some candles that they had brought with them, and laid out a map with symbols. What now? Lisa was trembling with fear, her hands shaking as she unfolded the last sheet of instructions for the ritual. "We need to put the board in the center of the circle," she whispered, "and say these words together." She read a short sentence in an unfamiliar language. Mike, Lisa, and Kate stood trembling around the board. Mike reached out to the pointer and touched it, feeling an icy shiver run through his fingers. Lisa and Kate also took up the pointer, and the three of them began to repeat the words in whispers. At first, nothing happened, but then, as if an invisible force struck the center of the circle and the board began to shake, the pointer slid over the letters, laying out word by word. "The end is coming." "We won't stop," Lisa shouted, clutching the pointer tighter. "You won't take us." The board shook even more violently, and the candles began to go out one by one. Suddenly, they heard a rumble outside. All three of them froze, peering into the dark corridors. The silence seemed to have become oppressive, heavy, and then they heard a low, almost imperceptible whisper. It was a voice, but someone's voice was muffled, as if it was far away. "Help me." Mike looked up, his heart skipped a beat. That voice, it was Alex. "Alex," he shouted, releasing the pointer and running up to the exit of the hall. "Alex, are you here?" But there was silence again. Lisa and Kate remained standing by the blackboard, which had gone quiet again. Mike peered into the darkness of the corridors, but saw no one. Only Alex's voice echoed through the building, getting fainter and fainter. "She won't let him get away," Kate whispered, stepping back. "We have to finish. Right now." She grabbed Lisa's hand, and Lisa looked at Mike in fright and nodded. They stood around the board again and took up the pointer. Lisa began to recite the spell from the sheet, and Mike, nervously glancing into the darkness, joined them. The board shook again, and the pointer began to slide over the letters at breakneck speed. The words he was spouting were getting faster and fiercer. Mike could feel the cold filling his body, and Alex's voice was getting louder and shriller. "Finish it." "Stop it," he shouted, but his voice broke. Suddenly the board stopped. The pointer stopped at the word "holding." And suddenly everything went quiet. The candles were lit with a bright flame. The light from them became dazzling. They closed their eyes, feeling the air tremble around them. And then the darkness returned. They opened their eyes and saw that the board had split into two parts. All three of them were breathing hard. Their hearts were pounding wildly. Have we done this?" Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible. Mike slowly walked over to the board, picked up one of the halves. It was warm to the touch, and there was a small metal plate in the center of it. The word "forgiveness" was engraved on it. They froze, staring at the word. Then Mike, struggling to control his excitement, looked up at his friends. "Did she just want us to forgive her?" His voice was trembling. "We had to finish her case. She wanted us to understand." Lisa slowly approached him, her eyes full of tears. "That was the last step. We didn't understand, but she was trying to show us that not all rituals are evil, which is sometimes they just want to be liberated." Kate, feeling tears running down her cheeks, nodded slowly. They all stood in silence, holding this plate in their hands, feeling the tension that held them captive gradually go away. The board no longer controlled them. All she wanted was to be understood.